Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 3 of Todos Santos. Today we're going to be finishing the old town that we started last episode, mostly doing a bunch of detailing, and we're starting it off with this absolutely massive cathedral asset. Very beautiful asset, beautifully done. I think it adds it kind of works as like a centerpiece to the whole thing. Both looking from above, it kind of stands out because it's this one large building in the middle of an otherwise pretty empty block. And it also is a very prominent piece of the skyline. It stands out pretty nicely when you look at it from pretty much any angle. So it's a pretty cool addition here. It's probably larger than anything you'd find in a place actually, this size. It's definitely bigger than any of the buildings they have in Old San Juan, which this is based off of. But nonetheless, I think it is too good of an asset to pass up for this kind of build. So that's why I have it here. So we're starting off, I decided to raise it up a little bit because a lot of the blocks in the old town were lowered beneath the level of the road for some reason, and I didn't adjust for that. So I kind of took that opportunity of it being a little higher than the ground around it to add this like raised staircase area with a little bit of a landing there up top, which I imagine would be a good, a gathering space, this whole area here. So we're filling that out with some detail, putting some cobblestone decals down, and we'll do that down underneath the stairs, or at the bottom of the stairs later, and kind of create a little bit of like a plaza around the cathedral. Because I imagine this would be a pretty important part of the community, both serving as a church and as just a meeting space for secular activities as well. So I've been using this curb network a lot. I think it's by Arnold J. Rimmer, on the workshop. It's actually a series of curb networks that are just so useful for cordoning out areas like this, and it just adds, it kind of adds some depth to the seams between different ground textures, like especially between decals and like the surface painter ground texture, because there's kind of a difference in the resolution of the texture. I think it just helps to kind of separate them, and it just helps them blend together better. So I do that a lot with different walkways and stuff. And occasionally I'll use like the grassy or mossy or something expansion joints at the edge of decals also to kind of give a more subtler effect. But I think both really help just make the textures look a lot cleaner and have them meld a lot better. And here I'm using the just that blank road there to flatten out the area because it was kind of not even on both sides. And I'm using this amazing curb network by King Leno to add just a little bit of like a garden or a flower bed around the whole cathedral, and to hide the gray bottom there. And the networks have just changed the game so much. Before you'd have to do that with props. You'd have to put down the curb props and then raise them up and then put something underneath. It's just so much easier and it looks way better. It's better on the prop count. Obviously, you have to worry about segment count or node count or something like that. So that's going to be something I'll have to keep an eye on. But for now, I'm just going to kind of go crazy with these networks. And of course, now I'm using props. These are from the Monaco series, I think. They're just so great. And they really fit this area, I think. So I'm going to kind of make a fence around the whole area because I'd want it to be like it's a public area and you can just come and go whenever you want. But I wanted it to be, saying like, this is the area we maintain. You can go around and do whatever you want, but this is like the nice area. So I just wanted that kind of feeling there. So, it has controlled access points, and eventually we'll be putting down paths and stuff, and that'll kind of reinforce that. Yeah, so now I decide I want this whole thing to be grass, and there's a little weird spot over, it's on the top right now out of screen, but You'll see it in a second. I can't really figure out what to do here at first. I cut out quite a while of me just like messing around with stuff here. But eventually I decided to have like an extra little pathway there. I don't know, it's like a unique thing that sets that little corner apart from the rest of it. So it's not just all one big thing, one big plaza mirrored on both sides. There's a little bit of variety. And I think it kind of fits in nicely with there's that big area for utilities there, and then eventually we add like a little recycling drop-off area. I just think it's kind of a funny little thing to have those modern things encroaching just a little bit into this cathedral's landscape. So here's that little walkway coming to life now, and using these amazing decals. I think that same series is the one I used for the roads, but the herringbone decals there are just awesome. And then I decided to just fill this all in with bushes and maybe some trees and stuff. Just have this little bit of like a wild area next to everything else that's been developed and landscaped. I think that's kind of cool. Now we use these stone tile decals or stone slab decals, something like that. I think those are so great for like garden areas and pathways and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, there's kind of like the texturing itself is really nice, but then also the different kinds of rocks and stuff almost give it like the appearance of like a higher resolution. It's almost like a little bit of noise that adds, or grain that adds to the texture, and I think they just look really, really good in this game. Now I'm putting down some people park generators so that people actually come and hang out in this garden area. I think that's pretty important for something like this, because if you have this beautifully landscaped public area that looks very well maintained and no one's going there, that's kind of pointless. So, and I don't know why I don't use PPG benches here. I should probably go back and fix that, or at least replace a few of them. But I wanted it to be like a nice public area where people could go and just sit and in kind of a quiet area. And I thought that was kind of cool. Areas like this are just a lot of fun to just figure out what to do there. So I just decided to do kind of like a little public square or triangle, as it were. because I think that's kind of what people do in real life is they have these weird little spaces. No one wants to build like a building that shape in this kind of area, so they just kind of filled in with a little park or plaza or something like that. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm using more of these fantastic curb networks, like I mentioned before, to kind of delineate between the different textures. And I just love that the red is just a little bit different from the brick. And I think that adds just another layer to the different colors and the depth of the textures. And now I'm actually using PPG benches here. And I mean, these are the best. People actually sit down and use them, and it just adds a bunch of life to the city. And people actually treat them like parks, so they will leave their house and go drive and park and then walk out of the car and go there. That's so cool. Now people need shade here because it gets really hot, so some more trees. Now I'm kind of filling in this weird, I don't know what this is, schoolyard or something, fencing it off, and then, gotta have stain decals, nothing better than that, and some picnic tables. I was thinking it was a schoolyard, so I just put those in there as kind of like, that's where they go for lunch or whatever, probably like an elementary school or primary school if you call it that. And then trees for some privacy. Kind of looks more like a prison, but really, what's the difference? So now I'm just filling in this another weirdly shaped area with some cobblestone decals, and these just look, again, they're a little bright. I think I mentioned that in the first episode. Some of these decals look very bright in the gameplay, but when we get to the cinematics, the lighting is a lot different, and they just look so good. This decal in particular is just one of my favorites. I think it's by Skibbeth. I'm not sure. I should probably check that, but yeah, I just think this decal in particular just looks really awesome. And here again, I'm using that technique, except I'm using the expansion joints, the grass expansion joints, to kind of look like poured concrete slabs. Gotta have trees. You can't have a plaza or park without trees, in my opinion, or some kind of greenery at least. Then I have these weird spaces. I don't really know what to do with them, so I just kind of fence them off with some hedges, and I think it ends up looking really nice. And again, people use this just to walk through, which I love, having like these plazas be functional, and then they stop at the tables and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm really happy with this little area. It's another one of my favorites. And now we're building a parking lot. And I talked about this last episode. I don't like having to do this, but I'll do it. If I have an empty space like this behind a big building, and I imagine this is kind of like the entertainment district of the old town. Like you can see that big building right there, I imagine is like a theater, and there's another theater across the street. And there are some more modern buildings, some more, heavy capacity buildings. So I just wanted there to be a little bit of parking here. And yes, I know that cars can't actually go down there and turn around. That was my bad. I left space for that, and I ended up just putting a fence there, so that was a mistake. But I don't think it's really too bad. So just adding a bunch of trash and fences, the usual stuff in parking lots. But I still think it looks pretty cool. As opposed to parking lots as I might be in this instance, I still think they add a very nice look to an area. They might be a little grimy, a little dirty. There might be some trash there, but there's just, objectively, I think there's something very interesting about that. And now, so I'm imagining this building is like a hospital or maybe a university or something. It's a pretty cool building, and so I wanted to complement that with some landscaping. Some pretty developed landscaping, not anything too wild. So I have these kind of sloping curb networks, which to me, that just screams like university. But I can't think of anything specific that inspired this, but I still think it looks pretty cool. So now we're detailing this building, which I imagine is like some sort of government office that, historically was like the governor's office for this, all of the island or something like that. So it's a pretty old building that's now been repurposed for modern use, and they still have, some sort of bureaucracy working in there. And what is a bureaucracy without a really nice garden in their building? So they have to have this path skirt around. It's a little bit of a funny shape, I know, but I think it looks pretty nice. And I just kind of use the pieces that are included in this building, meaning like those walls there that kind of stick out and they just kind of look very plain. And I tried to use that to shape how I make this garden. So it's kind of two little enclosed spaces here. One on this side where I'm putting that curb, and then on the other side where I do this one. And then there's that kind of big area up against the castle wall there. So you could theoretically go out one of those little pockets in the building, go around, walk through the whole garden, and come in the other side. So it's kind of like a little U shape. And then I wanted to have some variety in the shrubbery here. So it looks, they use the same pieces, like the same ferns and bushes and trees, but they're arranged quite differently. I didn't want this thing to be just, two mirror images of each other in between the building. I wanted it to be kind of just a little bit asymmetrical, just to keep it interesting and keep it looking interesting from above, which I think is important, especially in this game because you spend so much time just looking straight down at your builds. I want it to look nice like that too, as well as up close in the cinematics. And I love being able to use palm trees. I've never really done like a tropical or even subtropical city before, so this is just a lot of fun, at least in detail. So it's a lot of fun to be able to actually use these because there's so many fantastic assets. So now we're really just putting the finishing touches on the Old Town. We're doing some one-way signs, and we'll do some do not enter signs, making sure that the AI understands how the traffic works. No, the signs don't affect that at all, but I just think that they look nice and they add a lot of detail because they're pretty impressive vertically if you're looking at it from like a Sims perspective. So I think it's really important to have signs in your city. I think like $2.20 mentioned this in one of his episodes, and I just totally agree with that. I think it's super important if you want to have a detailed city, that is. And then after that, we go through and we put in some power lines that kind of run over the tops of the buildings. That's something that was one of the first images I had in my head when I thought of the Old Town. So we do that, and then we do a little bit of clotheslines hanging across between buildings. And then that's really the end of the episode and the end of the Old Town, for now at least. So I'm going to leave you with some music and let you enjoy the rest of this time lapse. So enjoy the cinematics as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in episode 4. Bye.